Okay, so welcome back to another chat with another inspiring lady. We're going to be talking to Paulette today, and Paulette is a fitness and nutrition coach, specializing in the physical well-being of women in midlife and beyond. So, welcome, Paulette. Thanks for coming along. I really want to hear your description of yourself because I think with runners, with women, with menopause, we can be given a lot of labels from other people. So I think it can be pretty empowering to describe ourselves in our own words, and we get a better feel for who you are. So, yeah, the floor is yours. How would you describe yourself, what you do, and why it's important? There's a lot to go at there.
Wow. Okay. Thank you both. Thank you all, sorry, for inviting me. I am a personal trainer and nutrition coach specializing in women in midlife and beyond. I have been a runner myself in my 20s, in my 30s, in my 40s, and in my 50s. But I've always had, as part of my training tool, strength training. Um, because it just made me feel good. I picked up running specifically when I had children. I've got three children, and it was my way, my escape to get out and have my space. And that was when I really began to love running. And I then picked up, we then get pulled into the events. You go into the 10K, the half marathons, the marathons, and then in my 50s, I decided to do an ultra marathon, and it was then that I found that I was starting to get niggles really, for the length of the duration of training that I had to do to compete in the ultra, and it was at that point, and it was also came at the same time as I was retraining to be a personal trainer. So I used what I was learning to support the the training regime that I had to keep me basically injury free. Because what I was finding was that my recovery wasn't as it used to be. I had to start running with knee support. My foot strike was off, and just the efficiency of the running was slowing down. So I just basically overhauled it, and what would originally it would be like 70% running and like 30% strength training. I kind of turned that on its head and became more focused in using strength training to support what I wanted to do, really. And doing that, I was able to run, and that's still injury free, touch wood. Yeah. And my training partner, she's a dancer, and she's all about dancing and movement, Pilates, that sort of thing, was her priority, which is all great. But it didn't help her. She was suffering a lot, and so I used what I knew to help her in terms of overhauling her training plan to, to get her through the event that taking place with.
Amazing. So both of you managed what was it? Was it a 50K? And was it a 50K, Paula?
It was 100.
100.
It was 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Cotswold 100.
Oh, cool.
So a lot of training.
Oh, yeah.
To support. Yeah.
So you literally switched it on its head and went from sort of 60, 70, 30, 40 to put that the other way around, and did the majority of strength training and less running, and found that worked. I mean, it's worked for me. That's kind of how I would do it.
Yeah.
It's a hard sell though, right?
Sorry.
It's a hard sell to runners that.
Well, it really is.
Yeah, they want to run, don't they? They don't want to do the strength training side of things.
Yeah. And also, the agility work, plyometric work as well, to, increase ankle movement, stability, and all that sort of thing, to be able to, perform well. Yeah, it is a hard sell, but it definitely pays off. Definitely pays off.
you don't mind, I mean, what I'm not a big believer in speed or time or anything like that. I think just getting ultras done is amazing in itself. But
Same here.
Mal, how long did it take you?
So it was over 2 days.
Oh, okay,
It
yeah.
was over
So it's
two
a
days.
stage kind
Yeah.
of thing,
So
right?
yeah, and again, for me, it's all about the fun. I'm not into split times and stuff. Although I will look at it. You know, when I was
Yes.
training, it's interesting. When I had to train a man last year, and it was for a marathon, and it was all about the split times and stuff for him. And he mechanically couldn't move well either. And it was a case of strength training first, and then going out with him doing the running, and the movement was all off and everything. I was focus on technique and everything like that. We did a good time.
Good.
Yeah,
Did you dance a friend?
yeah.
Did she manage? Did she get round as well?
Oh, of course, yes, she did. Yeah, injury
Brilliant.
free as well,
That's the
which was
main thing.
great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, good, good. So I'm trying to phrase this next question. So if as regards coming back to there was a question around that, coming back to that point about it being a hard sell to runners around the strength training. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's such a problem for runners to kind of take on board what there is some research out there now suggesting that strength training is kind of injury preventative in certain situations and stuff. Why do you think it's kind of a hard sell for them, especially women runners?
I think what running gives is it's you're out in the air, your own physicality, and you can just switch off and you're just moving through, and it's a chance to be in your own space. I think going into any environment, whether it's in your home or in a gym environment, and then working through it, you've also got to think about what you're doing. So there's that mismatch with somebody having the knowledge of what they should do, and you've got to think about it. And I think that distance between knowledge and time as well. It's time. You can quickly go out and get a 20-minute, half an hour run, and it's like that rehearsed behavior. But if you've got to learn something new and it's something alien to you, I think that's the hard sell. But if you then pair that with the fact that a strength training program will help and make that movement of running easier and, more importantly, injury free, fortify your body, and if they can see the results, I think that's when you've got the marriage made in heaven. Yeah.
Claire, you're on mute, chicken, can't hear you.
Yeah, I think for the strength training side, I do run occasionally, not an awful lot, but my body's resilient enough that if I haven't done anything for a long time, I can actually go out and run, no problems.
Exactly.
So, and I think what's quite interesting is if I work with runners as well, you get them, they can't even stand on one leg without the hip collapsing, and it's like in trying to explain to them that if your hips collapsing, it's at some point in the run you're on one leg sort of thing. They cannot understand it till they stand there in front of a mirror and then look at the alignment, or I send them a video or something like that, and they go, "Oh my God, I did not realize that's me." It's quite interesting, and the foot movement and stuff, they don't see it.
Isn't it? It's alarming when you do see the single leg instability, and you think you're throwing your body literally, and you're demanding that effort, but you can't see it. Yeah.
So, Paula, if you were if we think about any runner, but particularly a recreational runner, one that's not particularly aiming for a particularly fast time in a 10K, maybe he's training for a 10K or something along those lines, that sort of 5-10K park runner, recreational, not an ultra. What sort of what sort of strength training? Because I mean, I'm speaking for it. Claire and I would both say that you could get a half decent strength training program, 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week for a runner is sufficient. And when you sort of say it like that to runners, they kind of look at you a little bit like, oh, well, that's not bad. I could probably find the time to do that. Like you say, there's that discrepancy or that gap between knowledge and doing. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But what's your kind of go-to strength training? I'm trying to give the runners that are listening an idea of just how simple it can be. 3 or 4 movements, 3 or 4 sets, 3 or 4 whatever. What would be your kind of go-to exercises, perhaps, for a runner to keep it nice and simple for?
Okay. Lunge movements. So single leg in terms of like a Bulgarian lunge would be great. Deadlifts for glute work. Anything single leg to balance out imbalances. Also incorporate plyometric and agility work for ankle stability, dynamic movements as well, with and without weights, jumping off boxes and stuff. Again, dynamic squats loaded with weights, kettlebell, something like that. Quick, fast movements with your feet and your ankles loaded is all good.
Yeah.
That sort
Well,
of thing.
yeah, and all injury protected or potentially risk reducing for injury. I would
Exactly.
find
Yeah. And also not to forget the upper body work as well, because movement in strengthening your spine and your upper body is going to help with running gait, and also your bones. Let's not forget the issue with bones. I was working in a gym 5 years ago, and there's a running group. They were training for the London Marathon, predominantly women. It was all about the running, very little to do with strength training, and the volume was considerable, as you would imagine, for a marathon. And unfortunately, one of the ladies sustained a hip fracture through the on in the race, in the marathon, came back. And what women do is they don't listen to their bodies. I mean, if we go through periods, we have children, and so our tolerance is high, and we then think that we ignore the signals and symptoms in our bodies, and we just push through them, unfortunately. And we really should be listening. And also, we think that what we've done before in our 20s, 30s, 40s, we should, there should be no reason why we shouldn't be able to do it, and we just push that aside, and we should be really listening to the cues. It's always in the cues of our body.
I think there's that quote that somebody said to me one day, pain is weakness leaving the body. And I went, no, pain is actually injury entering the body. There's a difference between pain of discomfort of working. But again, and to me, I try to teach my clients that little niggle is the body's red warning light. Ignore it at your peril, because it will come and bite you on the glutes. So kept that clean then. So, but it's true, isn't it? And the especially runners, I find that they have that ability to ignore it. Whereas when I'm under the bar, I'm like, oh, that don't feel good. Rack it up, leave it, walk away.
Yeah.
I think that's so true, isn't it? I think that there's that element of being a runner that you have at some point pushed through pain, mental pain, physical pain, to be able to progress and move from a run walk to a sustained run for a mile, 2 miles, whatever. After that, there's a certain level of pain and discomfort that we have to push through to get that. But yeah, you're absolutely right that we've almost glorified that and wear it as a badge in other areas of life sometimes. I might be that's another lane to maybe talk about another time, but yeah, I think that's really interesting, Paulette, that you've brought that up. Yeah.
It's that no pain, no gain, you
Yeah.
know, it's not. Yeah, exactly. Need to.
And
quash that.
especially when we do get to a certain age, our recovery just changes, doesn't it? So much.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think it was affecting me. So with your training, Paulette, how much time do you take off? Do you train do you do something every day, or do you periodize?
I do, but I've always cross-trained. It's just my preference. So, you know, I would run, but then for a long distance event, but then I would then take the next season and I'd go long distance cycling. And then I take the next season and do long distance hiking, you know. So I do a it's just what I fancy really. And then all of that is underpinned with strength training to support that effort. Yeah. So it's always, your body is always getting a rest from that repetitive action. So I've been able to be injury free as a result of that, really.
With your strength training, then, do you specifically do you prioritize a certain move? Like within my own training, it would be, and a lot of runners would be, the athletic hip hinge, the deadlift, the hard style swing, rather than the Girovic sport type of swing. Do you do things like that as a priority, or?
Yeah. Yeah, they are all in the toolbox for a training session across the week, together with, you know, plyo work and stuff like that. Definitely.
You brought up plyo work quite a lot, and I'm a big fan. I mean, even with my own clients, I try to just, you know, do you agree that plyometrics, do you require a certain baseline of strength or a baseline of training history in order to do, like you said, box jumps and things like that, particularly, or certainly high box jumps? I mean, even something as simple as skipping, you know, skipping rope, I found has been
Yeah.
really useful for people who run. And then you check that into hopping over the rope, you know?
Exactly. So yeah, baseline obviously, because there's degrees of plyo, right? And you always start with progressions, and you start at the beginning, right? So I almost style it like a footballer's training. You know, you got the cones on the floor, you do shuffles, get that fast feet work, shuffle between them, and then you get your hoops, and you're actually having to step over, and then you progress it from there, and then high tapping to an object. So that could be a flat lying kettlebell or something like that. Again, progressing like that, and moving progressively till somebody can, then do the long jump from a box and comfortably, stably, and obviously tying that with any single leg work. Yeah. All progressions.
So if we were sort of like going to, I know we're going a bit around that sort of ping-ponging from different subjects, but footwear, if you're running, do you have a preference what your students wear as footwear, and same in the gym, or do they wear the cushioned soles, or do you prefer more minimalist?
So if they're lifting weights, it's flatter. So it could be a vibro flat foot, barefoot soles, or if they don't have that flat, barefoot. Or Converses work well. That I've had to tell lots of people to change their shoes because they come in and they're wobbling all over the place trying to do a thing.
Good luck picking up something heavy when you.
It's been a campaign. I think I've got 4 people to change their shoes. It's a campaign. You have to then, why, and then, oh my God, I can really feel the difference. Definitely. Obviously, when you're out there running, something that supports I often tell them to get a gait analysis. Just to make sure that it's supported well, because there's a lot of ankle issues, certainly in 45, 50s. To make sure that they're strong. Supported.
I run in Vibrams.
I do say, what is that you're running with, and how old is that? Their shoes, because it's just not so.
I run in Vibrams. I've got Skinner's running socks that I lift in when it's cold. I do prefer to lift barefoot, purely because, as we all know, I liken it to my with my students. Would you go to work in gloves and mittens all day? And they were, no. I said, well, yeah, you're doing the same to your feet. You've got the same proprioception in your feet as you have in your hands and things like that. But I've got the Skinners, but here because I'm on track, there's too many stones. I'm brave and I'm tough, but no. So the Vibrams, they're quite good for me to run in personally, and having cushioned soles. I'd got some Asics. Oh my god, the back problems from 2 runs in them. I'm like, nah, I'd spin them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Actually, injuries. What kind of injuries do you see? Have you had any of yourself or clients that you've had to deal with that you think, oh right, this is perimenopause, or this is doing too much of this or too much of that? How do you see that playing out in your own clients?
So ankle predominantly, Achilles, knee issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so supporting the knee with strength training of the quads and the muscles surrounding that, ankles, just making them, moving them through. I do, what do I do? Yeah, the plyo, as I've said, a bit of agility work, clock formations in terms of tapping and just moving the ankle through a different range of movements. And shin work to make sure that the shins are supporting the whole ankle.
So when you say ankle, Paulette, do you mean like are these people that are recurrent recurrent what do you call it? You go over on your ankle. I'm trying to think what that
Yes,
this is called.
just basically turning, just the foot is not supporting them. Yeah, so
Yeah. Is that what I mean? That's why that's the kind of way I would approach it. Look at not just the foot, but what I find is the foot's generally that weak from being stuffed into a tube for 40, 50 years that the ankle's having to do so much more. It just doesn't have that kind of support coming up from the bottom. Is that the same kind of thing you would find as well?
yeah, something similar like that. I mean, one client decided to not go down the shoe route, to support it, or the training route, and decided to use walking poles for a year. I said, no, don't do that, because you're never going to get better because you're sharing the load with a pole. So it's about education.
I'm with you. If you want to train your body how to use a walking stick, get some walking poles. There you go.
So with sort of like ladies that sort of like if they have pelvic floor issues, if they do you have a female health physio that you refer out to, or is this or is it something that you suggest that they need to find somebody to help them through the pelvic floor weakness?
Yeah, I do have a close friend that I did one of my courses with that specializes in women's pelvic floor health, and I do refer out in that respect.
Yeah. It's very difficult one to find physios that specialize in this. And I think as well, which I've mentioned before, but I won't mention the brand, it's been made that it's quite normal, that we need to accept it, that it's a thing we've had children, it's an age thing, things like that. But I think and it's like one of the courses that I was on, it's like the lady said, it is a muscle like anything else. You've got to look at the diaphragm, you've got to look at the breathing, and things like that. And I'm incredulous that some women do the unwillingness to actually address it, and that are so accepting of it that they cough, they sneeze and stuff like that. It's do you find a resistance to women getting help or not?
I think they're resigned to it. Never have I become more aware of it, having taken, I used to take classes, and you'd give, like a circuit class, you'd give a kind of whether it's a jumping or a toe tapping type move to to an object, and I can't do that, or running, shuttle runs and things like. And
Yeah,
then ladies say I can't do that because my pelvic floor. Yeah.
yeah,
So and they do their own version of that, and they've just resigned themselves,
yeah,
which is shocking, isn't it?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's more to do with people not knowing that there is help to
The
be had.
mentions exactly. Yeah, I think that's the case. That
I think
message
it's
isn't gotten through, that we can do something to support it.
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think sort of as well, sort of thinking about it, it's like when you think about it, if you watch ads on the TV, I don't really watch TV, but if you watch the ads, it pretty much sums up the health of the nation, doesn't it? Really, when you look at it, you can't poop, you poop too much, you've got inflammation, you've got fungal nail, you've got everything is, and you've got the incontinence pads. And it's like, it's okay, I can go and dance, but I'm just, and I'm not belittling the fact that it does happen. I mean, obviously, but the fact that we are resigned to it, and there's help out there, and a certain brand says, well, it's okay. And it's like, and
Yeah.
there's stuff that you can address, and there's things that you can do, whether it's hormonally, whether it's training, and I don't know about you, I find it really frustrating sometimes, as you can tell.
Well, I do too. And it was, I think, again, another 5 years ago when I was going down the supermarket aisles, and I came across the sanitary pad
Mm.
section, and the incontinence pad section was larger, and I couldn't understand it.
Wow.
I thought, what's going on? And it just suddenly, and then I realized there was a problem.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. It's yeah, and but when I had a lady that I was training, and actually trying to find a physio, but a good physio, it's
The thing, yeah.
yeah, it is very, very challenging, because I think as well, sometimes the cause isn't looked at, and it's like, again, we're all aware of it. You go to a therapist, and there are some amazing therapists, I've worked with many of them, but they looking at the symptoms, not the cause of the symptoms. And I know, they're not looking at the body as a whole. It's like the knee's hurting, it's the knee, and often the knee is actually is something above or below, isn't it? That's the symptom of something else.
Like we were saying before, the pain is a message. The pain isn't there just to be solved as a problem in itself. It's trying to give you some information about what else is going on.
Pain is an unreliable witness.
Yeah. It makes me think of a conversation I can't say I overheard because it was in a Facebook group. So I was, how you get tagged into things sometimes.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really my area to comment on, but it was interesting to read some of the things, the experiences of different ladies around this pelvic floor issues, and the fact that they didn't want to go to the doctor or refer themselves, because the worry there was that they would just be told to do Kegels. They'd just be told to wear a pad and make sure that they were emptying the bladder every time they went to the toilet. And that the fear was that would be all that they would get. And so that has to have happened for some people, to then sort of have this message passed around that that's all you're going to get. And we need a stronger message to be passed around, that there are real experts and people who really will help solve the problem. But yeah, it's a tricky one to manage when there's so much fear around it. It can take years for women, can't it, to get the courage and to get the final straw of, yeah, I need to sort this out, can't do this on my own.
I think the misinformation, can you all remember those like rebounder things where you could go to classes and stuff like that? And the actual coach from a very well-known health club that I worked at had said, oh, well, don't worry about it. If you wet yourself, just put an incontinence pad on and it will help strengthen the pelvic floor. And I'm like,
Oh God.
and I'm like, I had to, and it was one of those rare occasions that Claire kept her mouth shut. and it killed me. But that poor woman, that she was never going to sort it out because she'd been given the wrong information. Oh, don't worry about it, jump up and down, it'll strengthen it. I'm like, oh, probably not. So we're in a very, very difficult position. And I suppose we're lucky enough that we have the right information, we have the access to the right information and the right people. So it's how many do you train? A lot of men runners as well then, May?
I have done not recently. I've only trained one recently. No, two recently. One remotely, one in person. Recently, a couple of years ago, it was quite a lot. When I was working in the gym, I now work in private studio, so less volume in that respect. But yeah.
Was there any resistance to them doing strength training if they were runners, or the male, were they more? They were more
interestingly, I had a very fast runner a couple of years ago who had done no resistance training at all, and he wanted to become faster in a marathon, and I said it was all about resistance training, baby, and and I had 3 months to give him strength training and fast running, speed work in the gym, and he did come under. What was his time? It was because he wanted to be sub 2.5, and he just came under that. So yeah, it's good.
What do you find the women's resistance is to the training, to the strength? What do you think that the myth is that it? Do you think they think it's going to make them bulky, slow them down?
Always, every single time, yeah. And I said, well, I'm not bulky, and it's what I do all day, every day.
So there's still that fear around it.
First thing that comes in, first thing.
Wow.
So we've got a fear of being bulky, a fear of slowing them down, when actually we can pretty much nail it on there. It's going to actually improve your performance, whether that's, from a speed, well, it's usually speed, is it? I'd say speed, but perhaps I'm thinking more along the lines of sort of trail or fell running. Perhaps, it's that ability to get up hills and down hills more efficiently as well.
Power. Yeah.
Power. Yeah, power's the word, isn't it? Yeah, quite right. Yeah, that rear wheel drive kind of thing. I was going to ask you. So we kind of touched on before, we got sidetracked with the pelvic floor, and my brain's just like that, pelvic floor. I've got all sorts of questions I could go down there. Kind of dragging it back to the strength training. We kind of touched on before about this, you're not needing to know that many, you don't need to know every exercise available to man and beast in the gym in order to get a really good full body strength training, or however you want to describe it, a full body, whole body strength training program. And by the same token, you don't really need an awful lot of equipment, right?
Right.
Can get away with relatively little equipment. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, you're looking to progressively load, and you're looking for a demanding workout. Okay, so light weights, high repetitions is good as a starter, but really, as we're getting older, we should be looking at significant loading. So that can be with heavier weights if you're in a gym environment and you've got access to that, or if you're in a home. When I'm giving my remote clients home training, they have a kettlebell, a medium and a light one, a heavy one. But I'm all about resistance bands because they are amazing they're inintrusive, but you can get a real good loading with 5 different grades of resistance band, and they upper body, lower body, pushing, hinging, all that sort of stuff.
Agreed. And just I'm conscious of the fact that when we get on these calls, Angie, Claire and I, and yourself obviously, but for us three that are interviewing people, we come from a health and fitness background. I know what progressive loading is. I know that it needs to be progressive. But for a female runner that's watching this, that word is probably just going to go. And I don't know, I mean, you could all shoot me down here, but what I found when I've been training women particularly is they tend to do the same exercise at the same weight for the last 20 years, you know. It's like
Big Barbie weights.
Yeah. So progressive really does mean that. And it's a case of Paulette, I am struggling to ask open questions because I kind of go, I know what I'm talking about. I could just go blah blah blah, and Paulette goes, yes, but it's your interview. Can you get your crystal ball out?
Explain what I mean by progressive. So what I find is that women sit in their comfort zones with strength training, exercise, and we have the capacity to, as I've said before, that we in our own bodies will take a niggle or a pain and we'll think nothing of it, we'll ride through that. But when it's coming to pushing a heavy weight or demanding weight, certainly in my experience, they're almost terrified being brought to that brink because they think something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So progressive is, so for example, if you're working with a 5 kilogram weight and you're doing 10, 12 repetitions, 15, you can knock that out without even thinking about it. What I say to my clients is, if they're knocking out a weight and they're thinking about their shopping, it's not heavy enough. They've got to be completely focused on that movement, and that's the only thing they can think about as they try to get that repetition, that exercise out. And if you're that focused on it and you can think of nothing else, then you've hit the sweet spot. If you can think about something else, you can lift a little bit more.
I like that. That's a good way of looking at it, actually. Yeah.
I think a lot of sort of like going back to when I worked in a health club, you could literally in the morning, if you opened up at 6 in the morning, that was their treadmill. They would not, it was the same, and it was like you just saw people's bodies not changing for the better. And I come from like the strength training sort of area, and it's like I think people don't realize that if you haven't got access to a weight, you can change how you use your body. If you're pressing a weight, really pull it in, and it's like the active negative, and people don't, using that is such a great thing. And it's like what you're saying, you can vary the volume, can vary the intensity, vary the density. There's so much that they can do, but they do the same thing and expect a different result.
Partly got to be down to that's partly, you don't know what you don't know.
No. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So
I think there is that fear, isn't there, of I'm going to hurt myself. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to make things worse. I'm going to give myself an injury. And it's just easier to stick with what I know. So I'm just going to stick with what I know, and that becomes
And the strength training makes the body a much, much more resilient anyway. But there's a really good quote that Pavel Tsatsouline used. Men need to train more like women. Women need to train more like men. And basically what he meant by that was men need to put the ego away, do it properly. And women need to push it a little bit harder. And I just thought that it was just the simplicity that he put that. And women have got a lot more capability
than they think they are.
They're a lot stronger than what they think they are.
I think there's something to be said for the messages that we hear. We get messages about all sorts, don't we, all the time. But all this stuff about ergonomics and lifting with your back straight and lifting with your legs and being very careful of your spine and only sitting in a certain way with your chair at this right and your hands at this level, and it gives that message of like, you're completely fragile. Please don't lift anything heavy up. So when you do go to the gym and somebody hands you something super heavy, you go, fuck that, I'm not playing with that. It's not going to break myself.
Exactly.
It doesn't help, I don't think, everything that we hear telling us just how potentially breakable we are,
Mm.
especially as women, and especially as we go through the change. You know, it's all like Angie was saying in the preamble to this, where we were just chatting. We're just given all these messages about how everything's changing, but everything's declining as well. You know, like your hair's falling out. What we were talking about, thinning hair and strength disappearing, pelvic floor suddenly becoming an issue, and you're wetting yourself when you bend down to pick up a can of beans. All those messages just leave you in a worse position for feeling like you've got any kind of empowerment or control over your own destiny, and that your body can actually get better and stronger. It doesn't all necessarily need to be in its nosedive into obscurity. That's my little waffle done, I'm sure. There was no question in sight there, was there?
And while all of that's going on, we're faced with, as women, we should strength train, and it's been made to be complex.
Yeah.
And so we haven't really, you know, with all that going on in our heads, we're thinking, well, I haven't got time to think about it or to learn it. And it doesn't have to be complex at all. Just
No.
be aggressive in what you lift and do a different ranges of movements. Yeah.
And do you find women find the barbell quite intimidating? And to actually do a good deadlift is actually quite a complex move. But I start my students off with any deadlift move. It's 1, learn the hip hinge; 2, learn to breathe; 3, strong foot. Kettlebell. It is the safest tool to use, and it's the easiest to learn comparatively to a barbell. I mean, that's what my findings has been. I don't know if that's the same with you.
Yeah. I mean, I had a 71-year-old, 72 now, first training session with me, and was doing a suitcase deadlift. And she looked at it, I think the weight was only about 2 kettlebells, 12K each. And she looked with wide eyes at the prospect of even possibly being able to lift it. You know, fast forward 4 weeks later, and she's now capable of lifting, I see her twice a week, lifting 216 kilograms with comfort, with good form. And deadlifting, you know, 40, 45. And she said, you know, it's like a key's been unlocked.
Yeah.
She feels amazing.
Yeah. I think it's that empowering moment, isn't it? When they actually
and that's
up and go.
Yeah.
Because that what you've just described is not the typical image of a woman at menopause, at postmenopause, even at 70, of decline and things going downhill, and you know you're on the heap. You're now not.
Well, exactly. She came to me as an older woman, beaten down and she wanted something different. She walks out like Beyonce. I mean, I literally say that she's just, you know, feeling something. Yeah. Exactly. You know, that is the power of, you know, strength training and pushing a force, you know, and recruiting everything of your body, and you just feel empowered, I think. I mean, that's really what I think I stand for, is that empowerment of women.
And it's not superficial, is it? What you're saying is that is building inner muscle strength, mental capacity, physical resilience. It's all there in the bag, and it's all there available to everyone.
I think as well with women that they have a fear of picking up the weights. Yeah, they've just picked the child up off the floor, and then they're going, "Oh, I can't pick up an 8 kilo." The child probably weighs more than that. You know what I mean? You just pick, and it's that absolute fear of their shopping bags probably weigh a lot more than that. Yeah, you know, and it's like I just find it bizarre. I can understand the barbell being quite intimidating. I understand that. But you know, we as coaches would never allow a lady to go, or anybody, any student, whatever, to go and pick up a weight with bad technique without teaching, without assessing them anyway. So, you know, it's I love it when you see a woman go, I just did a 100K deadlift, and I was like, yes. So
Yeah, I think that's the empowerment kind of side of things is a good spot to end it on. Conscious of your time, Paul, I think you've been on a good hour now. Is there anything that we haven't asked you that you would like to, or you've got the chance to tell us about yourself, definitely, and where people can find you and all that kind of stuff? I'll do that at the end, but thinking more along the lines of, you know, when we asked you to do this, aside from being a bit nervous about what we might ask you, is there anything that we haven't asked you that you wish we had? And it's fine to say no. I'm not trying to put you on the spot by any stretch, but there might be something that you really wanted to get across that we've not asked.
No, I think we've covered a broad range actually. Just the empowerment of women to fortify their bodies, their changing body, and ultimately it's about keeping them doing the things that they love to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's any kind of recreational sports or going on a long holiday that involves lots of walking, hiking and stuff, and they need their body to support them with that, really.
I mean, we touched on this before we actually kind of hit the record button, and it was just, and I'm struggling to remember exactly what you said, and it doesn't really matter the precise words, but I found it really thoughtful. It made me think about the labels that we apply, and you saying that you stay away from the word menopause and try not to apply that label either to yourself or to anybody else for that matter, and it being about change. I kind of, not the change, but it just being a period of, I don't know, I'm trying to think.
It's a door that we're going through. It's a bit foggy, but we're going to get through the other side. And at the end of it, once we get there, it's going to be amazing. You're going to be liberated, aren't we?
Yeah.
Free from the shackles of periods and all of that sort of stuff. And it's all out there. And you want your body to support you because there are things you can do. That's why I stay away from putting ourselves in that camp. Yes, we're menopausal. Well, I am menopausal woman, but there is so much more to us than that, really, and we can be amazing individuals.
That's just the best thing that you could have said to finish on.
Yeah.
That's exactly the message that we want. That's just brilliant. Thank you so much. Now tell people.
Where to find you?
Paulette Eldridge. I'm going to give your full name out.
Paulette Eldridge. You can find me on Instagram under Surrender to Fitness, which is my Instagram handle, and I'm very passionate about that because I think fitness, in all its forms, is what gives us our strength, both mentally and physically. And my website is Paulette Eldridge, pefitnessnutrition.com.
Perfect. Thank you.